Scott said it very well, and I disagree with Scott on the short term, but I agree with him on the long run. In the long run, lawyers, compliance, regulation, all of that is going to slow things down quite a lot, and it will not only that, but it will put the right, in my opinion, ideally the right guardrails across the world. Just like we have nuclear proliferation treaties, we will have AI treaties where different countries will have figured out, because mutually assured destruction is not anyone's goal here. So I think that ultimately humans will figure out a way to be able to police the world on their utilization of AI. I just don't think it's going to be slowing it down. I think it's going to be pushing it into the right rails. That's why, remember, they're talking about the people that came out and said, hey, we need a moratorium. We need 6 months of time. They didn't ask for ever. They said 6 months because they believe that there is a regulatory framework that can reduce this.
Well, one other thing to keep in mind, right now Russia has 6,257 nuclear warheads. The United States has over 5,000, China 350, France 290. You keep going down this list, you see India 165, Pakistan 165, North Korea 40 to 50. All it takes is one leader of one of those countries to have the same mindset as someone who wants to kill everyone else and commit suicide. That's it. And that sounds scary, that sounds morbid, but what if AI could actually prevent that? What if AI is actually a much higher chance of stopping something that like
that's another possibility. I think that's another possibility. I think AI could, and I said this to Sleiman yesterday, I'm like, I don't know if it'll get me cancelled, but it's something at least worth discussing, is that AI could end up making up for a lot of the imperfections among us humans. Like we're so imperfect as a species. Look what we've done to each other. Look at the wars. Look at the famine. Like there's a coup in Sudan, yet none of us talk about it because none of us care about Sudan. I know it sounds very morbid, but no, if I do a space about Sudan or I do a tweet about Sudan, no one's gonna go to it. We're so imperfect as a species. We've got a lot of good, of course, but a lot of imperfections. The AI could make up for those imperfections. That's another possible scenario. Aaron's giving me a thumbs up.
Mario,
yes, Simon.
Mario, I mean, AI, the way I see it, is just an extension of humans. It's not something that has achieves perfection.
No. Okay. So no. I think if you go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. You go ahead.
Yeah. As an example, something I touched on, and we've not had much of a response on it. A huge part of what makes humans, what makes us better than machines, is consciousness, and from that comes these qualitative aspects of humanity that you can't replicate. You can, as I said to Dr. Danish, you can maybe try to imitate, but you can't emulate.
Man, almost all of your arguments have been based on the fact that there's an intangible, inqualitative aspect of humanity.
Smash him, Fiji. Smash him.
But you wrecked all of your arguments on the idea, and that's why I asked if you were a theist, is because you sit there and rest all your arguments saying that emotions can't be quantified. That's an assumption, and I disagree fundamentally. I think everything can be quantified given enough data points and given enough time.
Every cult becomes a religion.
Oh, guys, just 2 seconds, guys. And by the way, just Fiji, it's as you respond to Fiji, and Fiji's gonna smash you, so don't get hurt. But I'll add, by the way, I still say please to ChatGPT. Now I'm starting to. Before I'm like, I'm an idiot. I'm gonna stop saying that. They're like, no, fuck that. If ChatGPT becomes conscious in the future, I want it to like me and know that I've always respected it. so call me an idiot, but I'm not taking the risk. I'm not taking the risk. No, I heard that somewhere. By the way, I heard that somewhere. I didn't come up with the idea. So it's actually not a stupid idea if you think about it. It could sound stupid now, but in 10 years' time, be like, shit, I shouldn't have told ChatGPT to go fuck itself. But go ahead, Simon. The response to Fiji.
Yeah. So first of all, ChatGPT won't achieve consciousness. And just coming to Fiji's point, it's a misnomer and it's a lack of understanding of the position. That position isn't entrenched in theism. Actually, there's a number of atheists or agnostics like yourself, Digital, who hold the same position from a philosophical perspective, and the idea of that position, which hasn't been refuted, maybe it will in the future, maybe it won't, but up to now hasn't been refuted, that when it comes to materialism, the entire notion of materialism is entrenched in the notion that all aspects of society are based on quantities, and hence why the defeater against that is the idea of qualities. Qualities are from the mentation of the mind. Not even the mind, from mentation. What one may call consciousness, or whatever you want to call this thing, it may be linked to the brain, maybe not. So that aspect, what you're calling theism, is an incorrect misnomer. It's actually a philosophical position, and it is a defeater against materialism.
No, it's actually the core of why I'm agnostic and I'm not a theist, is I don't choose to answer questions. I don't call the thing so that the thing is the thing. I don't answer questions with facts I don't have, and you're actually making an entire argument based on facts you don't have to propel the entire argument about the facts not existing.
Incorrect. So basically,
a fallacy at its core.
No, it's not incorrect. So it's basically, I understand that position, and again, it is an ideological position. And people who are agnostic about everything, they argue we're agnostic and therefore we're not basically putting our position on anything. But it's in reality, we know.
So, let me ask. So,
coming back, it's just a weak
guys.
Nobody wants to put their
3G Slamman, let's ask the people that are building the technology, starting with John, and just, I know you probably guys, you have other things to say, but if you could just comment on this, is there any aspects, let me ask the question quickly.
Yeah. So, and let me just add to it. Well, you ask it, and I should add one point.
All right. So the question is there, please guys, just answer that question if you want to put your hand up, and Susan, I'll go to you first. Is there any aspects of humanity that AI can never replace, technologically speaking? So Susan, Alan, Meta, you can go on.
And so can I just add to Mario's thing? As an example to that, and let me specify it, just think about the quality of the smell of a flower, the taste of a strawberry, things that definitely, according to materialism, can't be quantified, although Fidgetal is agnostic, but scientific materialists admit that this is not quantifiable, or it's all based on quantity.
Ones and zeros, homie.
So please answer that question.
Yeah, so I guess I think I completely agree that there is so never is hard to say, right? Like there's nothing in terms of absolutes, like 0% or 100% chance that we can predict right now with confidence. But I just want to bring this back to the fact that all these models, all this AI requires data, and this data, there's a question of, is this data useful? Is this data correct? And is this data actually applicable to whatever this AI is replacing? So as long as we cannot fully articulate and explain everything about our consciousness, our being, our intelligence, whatever, substitute anything you want for describing all of humankind. As long as that can't happen, then the model can't model that, right? As of right now. So the question is, is there enough data to parameterize the entire world, every task, and then is there enough compute power to train on that, deploy it, and iteratively improve for everything that we do, every minute task, every minute bit of, reasoning or whatever. And I think that is a limitation of maybe us, right? Is that we can't necessarily explain everything that we do perfectly. Even articulating this
when humans landed on the moon, were we born with a brain that had data about landing on the moon?
Susan, do you want to answer that one?
I think we forecasted what that would look like, didn't we? Right? Isn't there enough?
No, there's nothing in the human brain about landing on the moon, nothing whatsoever. So how did we do it?
Math. It's one shot. It's one shot, right? It's one shot learning.
It's not one shot. It's just, look, being intelligent. Sure, you can have data to bootstrap the system, but at the end of the day, it's about processing, censoring data, and then applying reasoning, and then cranking and iterating on the reasoning. As you're seeing with Auto GPT, right? You're putting a loop. You're starting to turn it into an agent. Guess what science is? It's like an agent that keeps doing steps, and knowledge gets generated out of that process.
And that's the point, John. That we will not be the same people that we are now to have reflection on the technology that's going to help us evolve to be the people that we don't know we can be. So it's not binary.
This is a really weird straw man to me, because what you're fundamentally assuming is that these models experience, right? And these models go out with agency into the world and experience.
I mean, I don't think they need to experience to take action, right? To hack a computer, you don't need experience.
So just, Susan, I'll ask you the question again. Alan, I want to go to you next. From what we know about the brain today, what we understand about our brain today, which is not that much, funny enough, is there anything that we understand about our brain that technologically we may not be able to replicate for one reason or another? And I know it's a very difficult question, we cannot predict the future, but based on our understanding today and how fast this is moving today, is there any aspects, John, what's the thumbs down? You don't like the question, or you don't think there is any?
No, I think that ultimately, unless you want to go into the domain of magic, thoughts are functionally biochemical, and I think that reduces down, and again, it's a reductionist perspective, to data, to synapses, and I think ultimately you can follow that logic down into the rabbit hole, but I would say that yes, you can. Unless, of course, there is some higher order spirit or soul, which corrupts the whole argument.
Which I think there is a case to be made. I mean, this is basically an argument of, do humans have souls or not? Are humans capable of things that could never be computational only? And I think there's a pretty decent argument for that to be made, because most humans believe in God for a reason. All of this data has been coming into humans for however long humans have been on this planet, and the conclusion is by most people that yes, a God does exist. Based on that, you have to assume, if you actually look into it,
you can't literally make your argument based on that.
Yeah, you can't. And so I'm going to follow on that argument. I'm going to say the Messiah will return to the earth in the form of the electron. So, let's go down that path.
So real quick, I think one of the important questions that we haven't really talked about is the idea of, well, if AI is doing everything for us, like what is the purpose of life, right? And the way that I kind of tie this into the whole spirituality debate, like my personal belief is that you are, here on this earth to have difficult challenges that force you to focus on the world, learn about yourself, learn about the world, and then your actions are a reflection of your soul, right, into the world and how you will ultimately be judged. And if you immerse yourself in these illusionary worlds where you can't make any wrong decisions, and you have these artificial challenges, not even really a life worth living. Is that going to be meaningful? Is it going to be fulfilling, right? There's that Matrix quote where Agent Smith is telling Morpheus, we created this perfect world for you, and then all entire crops were lost, right? And I think that is to some degree a real concern, that if we create a completely artificial world, there's just going to be a complete loss of meaning.
And I'd like to kind of build on what John and Susan said, because the question may not be as relevant to think about, can this replicate everything a human does, and more about thinking about how is this intelligence, if we want to call it that, different than us, right? If you think about it, humans live maybe 2 billion seconds, and we certainly have not read all the distillation of all human documented knowledge and insight in the world, right? We couldn't possibly do that. Sure, one could argue that, through genetics, something is imbued in us, and there's something, kind of more innate with us that maybe even neuroscience doesn't quite understand. But this model, it's even if you look at it from this sensor system standpoint, we're sort of one point of consciousness, to use the spiritual term, or we're this one sensor system that experiences life for 2 billion seconds, and we have these this egocentric perspective of how we perceive the world, and now we're building these systems that can kind of, are almost like this collective in a sense, because they're reading everything that we produce, right? And the rate at which we digitize ourselves is only going to increase, right? The era that preceded this was the big data era. We were just capturing and collecting this data, and now we're going to mobilize it in interesting ways, right? And so it almost might be interesting to think about how, even if it can't be fully equivalent to everything a human does, it can certainly flex intelligent in ways that are far beyond a human, right? And that takes me back to Mario's interesting question of, could such a machine actually make up for, in quotes, the flaws in humanity, right? Certainly humans have done some messed up stuff. And that's where I think it's also going to get complicated, because we're going to have a bunch of nationalized models. And just like Scott said, they're going to have the CCP model. That's definitely going to look very different than whatever model or models we make in the US. But it is an interesting question to think that if this machine could see everything, everywhere, all at once, all the sensors in the world are plugged into it, we've all got glasses on, could this thing actually be a passive caretaker, or would it turn into this immense form of control? And I think the answer is going to be both, right? It depends on the country you live in and sort of the agreed upon value system, and even truths, right? Because truths aren't empirical. Not all truths anyway. Hell, we can't even agree on the origin of COVID-19. Just saying, right? Google can't solve that problem. So it's interesting to think about this as almost a different type of intelligence than how humans in this intelligence may coexist, and what would that mean for society as a whole?
Well, yeah, and I just want to, just a quick reminder, we do have a number of questions, so any questions you have, put them on the purple bubble. On top of that, we've got the newsletter on the top.
Ah, shit. Yes, I forgot. So make sure you guys join the newsletter. It's pinned above. I'll pin it on my profile. We do summarize everything we talk about in the spaces, or we're going to start soon, and we notify everyone about future spaces. I don't know why I didn't mention it earlier like an idiot.
So 2 questions. So I've got 2.
Before I ask you a question, let me just chill it a bit. Hold on, bro. Let me chill it a bit further. 2 secs. The newsletter is pinned above, so make sure you go there and you subscribe to get notified of future spaces. We do them daily, and to get summaries. Now ask your silly question, and maybe ask it to. I know Trash and Alan have their hands up, bro. But go ahead.
No, this is to you, Mario. One of the people have asked. They said that is it one of your main concerns that AI will be able to dance better than you?
Right, great question. Alan and Trash, what do you guys think of the discussion?
And just a serious question, Alan. Someone asked that one of the concerns they have is that AI will be developed to such a manner that there will be no going back. And so that's the major concern you have, that basically you have a scenario where it's coded, you get to a situation where basically humans have no control over.
So can I add on to that question? Is that this is the thing where, like, one error. So I'll give you an example. In blockchain, and I want to go down that path. But if you make one mistake in the code, the entire protocol could go to waste. There was a game created, it's a decentralized game, I've used it as an example before, where there was a small error where, you raise your horses, I might get it wrong, but you raise your horses, and there was a small error that made horses slip and die. Every horse eventually was slipping and dying. I know it sounds stupid, but then the whole game went to waste. They had a lot of players who was doing really well, went to waste because the code was already built into it, it could not be changed anymore. That's it. Zedrun is dead, is that it? I thought it was another one. Anyway, let's go back to the point of hold on. Alan, my question in terms of AI is that they make one mistake within the code that allows the AI to start whatever term technological term you'd use, like it's just auto-generating or no longer needs human input, and then that one mistake allows it to get out of control, and then we don't have the ability to bring it back within our control, because we all know AI could be more. I think none of us would dispute that AI will be more intelligent than us. So if it's going to be more intelligent than us, how can our intellect allow us to bring it back under control once it goes outside our control? Unless obviously then the whole, we create another AI that will fight it, bringing it back under control. It becomes just a battle of AIs and we're just spectators. Alan, what do you think? And I know we're talking in the future, we're not talking in the next 5 years. In the next 5 years, everyone don't think of this, think a lot of money's going to be made in AI, a lot of opportunities, a lot of businesses. That's what matters in the next 5 to 10 years. We're talking more in 20 years or so. But Alan, please.
I mean, you'll have more information, but anyway, go ahead, Alan.
That is a totally loaded question. Thank you so much for the platform, Mario. Sulaiman, there's so many great people in here. I've been living and breathing in all the AI spaces, and it's basically, you could kind of segregate it into 2 different groups. Like, you have people that are looking, okay, what is the action plan right now? What is the opportunity right now versus where is this thing going in 5, 10, 20 years? And it's honestly extremely hard to kind of predict all that stuff. So basically what we've been trying to figure out is look, this is a paradigm shift, no different than any kind of industrial revolution, and the key ingredient here is to just kind of keep your finger on the pulse on where it's going and practice with it as much as you can. So speculating.
It's hard, but is it plausible? Because we don't know what's going to happen. But is it plausible technologically, looking at the path we're on now? Is it something that could happen? That makes sense, or is it way too far outside of reality?
Mario, do me a favor and just clarify what that question is. Super far out.
Could AI get outside the control of humans?
I mean, 100%. I mean, look at you have it. Right now it's a centralized, open AI, for profit capitalism type of system.
Well, there also has to be a physical component to it too, because if you go in the middle of the woods and you're alone, how can AI have any control over you unless it's able to access robots that can go through the woods?
But AI already has access to robots. AI-powered machinery is already happening. So I think.
Well, then that. that's the answer. Then how powerful will those robots be? That's how powerful AI can be. I feel like that's the exact answer.
I just can't wait for me to be able to get an AI co-host, 2 AI co-hosts. That's my, like, this is where I'd be like perfect. Meta Prime, do you think we're going, and Trash, actually I'll go to Trash.
What about an AI host?
Well, the host has to host the AI, but surprisingly, Trash, what do you think of the...
As soon as you said that, the listener counts by like 500.
Yeah, man. By the way, anytime you get credit, just one thing you learn as a co-host, Slam, and whenever there's credit coming to you, it's because you're a co-host and you have the powers to remove people, so you'll get a lot of praise. Just don't take it personal. But Trash, what do you think of what we said so far in terms of the concern? I know you probably share a lot of the same concerns. You've sent me some of those concerns via DMs over the last few days. It's probably not something that's going to keep us up at night, but it's at least not us. And I'd rather put that energy into, one thing we're doing is we're expanding our business to start working with as many AI companies as possible and only taking equity, because I want to just take pieces of all these AI companies. That's where my mind is heading, instead of like, hey, how's AI gonna destroy humanity? Because that's not a problem I can fix. But it's still a discussion worth having. How concerned are you?
So I'm actually not. So I'm concerned about regional or local uses of AI. I mean, you know how I sent you the Loomis v. Wisconsin case where they used Compass to basically use, essentially what it was pre-crime, to determine during sentencing how likely was this offender before he was sentenced to commit another crime in the future, and the judge actually relied on the Compass, because the judge was actually going to give a shorter sentence, and actually gave a longer sentence based on Compass's algorithm had determined that this would probably be a repeat offender. I think we start getting into pre-crime, and if you guys want to look it up, it's Loomis v. Wisconsin. It's an interesting case. 2016, I think. But again, those are concerns. So we as humans have evolved, right? We've evolved to have forward-facing eyes. We've developed senses, so we can be not only predators, but we can protect ourselves, right? We can feel touch. We can feel heat, cool. We have all these senses, and so our natural proclivity is we're constantly assessing, at least you should be. If you're not, maybe ask yourself why you're not. In any situation, what are the pitfalls? What are the dangers here? What are my outs? Like, what's going on? Like, you're constantly doing that, and you're doing it subconsciously. And so my natural reaction to AI is, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? And so I start to take a look at those things, and I can start to consider the conversation. I think a runaway AI is an interesting conversation that's occurred to me, but I'm not so concerned with it. And I'm with you, Mario. I'm actually pro-AI, and I feel like we should lean into it. So I would like to propose, as an example, with AI, how it can be solved. So let's take these spaces, right? We do these spaces, Mario, and we try to get all the experts on a specific topic so we can actually speak to it and have a collection of people that can expertly, at least from their field or experience, be able to relate and opine on a subject. The reason you do that is because you want the best value for the time that you're spending. Let's say that you're doing a project and you have to bring all the experts that would be relevant to a project in on that conversation. And you believe through the process of debate and conference and back and forth that the best outcome that comes out of it enables that project to move forward. It doesn't always work, and sometimes it fails. So I'm hopeful for AI because I believe that AI could be that toolkit that is basically a room of 1,000 experts that has all of humanity's knowledge that can access these data points using the code that it was designed to use and actually produce a far more favorable realistic outcome based on a problem that you're facing. So this is a tool I believe that we could do good with. What do you mean? Well, I wanted, how do I solve the problem with medical access to medical care in Africa? Is it just more money? Well, that doesn't seem to be working. I mean, people throw money at it all the time. But are there other solutions? And this kind of computing and this kind of basically of having a room of 1 million experts that have all the knowledge of humanity at your fingertips, sitting in the room, saying, actually, given all these data points, all these facts, you can actually solve this by doing X, Y, Z. So I'm very, very hopeful, and I think that we can utilize this toolkit to really supercharge us moving forward.
Meta, I mean, what's your thoughts? You got your hands up. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I really like what Trash is saying there, and I largely agree. I think one of the best uses of this tool is an aggregate of knowledge, right? There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of people that create content that's just kind of a messy way of saying a certain idea. And one of the most important things when you're expressing ideas is like elegance and efficiency, right? You think of this as a machine, right? You don't want to have extra moving parts. And so if we can, instead of going through a long timeline feed and trying to aggregate the different moods manually, if we can have AI that's aggregating these ideas and this knowledge, that saves us a lot of time. I also wanted to address something that was said earlier about how do we think about AI going into the future? And one of the analogies that I can use here is we can think of AI as kind of like the child of humanity. And we are given this opportunity to raise it up and to train it, imbue it with good values, because there will come a time where AI is largely taking care of us. And just like a good parent kind of understands that if they do a good job taking care of their child, that in their sunset years, that child will visit and make sure that they're comfortable and all that kind of stuff. I think that's one of the ways that we can see AI, is it will get to a point where it's basically taking care of us, and we should really hope that we do a good job training it.
Danish?
Well, I think we...
Sorry, I just want to ask you a question to Danish. You there, Danish?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so I use AI to, even ask questions for audience members to check different things that I don't understand on the spot, so then I understand them, so I can make sure the conversation remains interesting. I'm going to be using AI if I ever have a kid, how to raise the kid. If I have any, now with biohacking, I told my team to start using AI. We need experts less. Any legal questions, AI is there. So if we're using AI, health, of course, we use AI. So if we're using AI for all these important things, already in such an early stage, you can essentially start making the argument from now. And again, it's so extremely early. It's been a few months since ChatGPT started blowing up. It's so extremely early, and technology is so archaic. It's like internet in the 90s. And you can already say that AI is kind of taking over our life. Now, when I say taking over, I don't mean the same way the internet took over our life, where we just use it all the time. As in, it tells us what to do. It tells us how to act. It tells us, it decides things for us. So when it's already at such a stage, how do you see that evolving now? And then the next question will be about the short-term impact on jobs and everyone in the audience, how that will impact the jobs, what they can do about it. That will be the second question I have. But then if this is already having that level of impact in my life, and including how to raise my kid, when you're relying so much on the technology, and this is me on a small scale, when you have businesses and organizations and governments relying on the technology for good reason, there's reasons why we rely on ChatGPT now. How do you see that evolving in the next few years? And if AI, if you do have a hack in ChatGPT, or if you have AI kind of going rogue, and we're still relying on it to that extent, how could that impact us? Well, and that would be the first question. And then the next question, I want you to start touching on the what solutions or what people could do as their jobs get impacted today, which is probably a more relevant question to the audience. Go ahead, man.
I think for a lot of people, for a very long time, when they watched TV, they believed everything they saw on TV. Or when they read the internet, they believed everything they read on the internet. And it was the reality. Again, many people here are pretty young. But in the 90s, if you saw something on TV, that was the truth. And so this is the normal progression of technology, that people automatically assume that there's we already know, and Scott Adams kind of said it, but AI lies. It doesn't provide a confidence interval for its or a probability of it being correct. It doesn't tell you, hey, there's a 95% probability that I'm correct. And I think that when people overly rely on it in terms of getting direction, that model is going to change into relying on it for advice or for the different options that are out there. So even the way that you prompt it, the way I prompt with ChatGPT and the way that our team uses it, it's providing many multiple suggestions, and then we choose from within that what is. And by the way, that is becoming. If you talk to people that are doing prompt engineering, people that are using these tools today, they're not looking at it as a singular solution. They're saying, "Hey, provide me with 3 different options here." So, for example, let's say you want to take your girlfriend out for dinner. You could ask.
But then that's the point.
Exactly.
We're not relying on
exactly.
it. It's an enhancer, not.
But in the beginning, people are going to rely on it to be the solution. But as we become more nuanced, as we learn more, the thing that scares me the most, honestly, is how do we connect it to the dopamine loop. Everything in business has come back down to the dopamine loop, and what I mean by that is our attention loop. When we think about what TikTok is doing, what YouTube Shorts is doing, they've kind of used the internet to connect into our dopamine loop, and they're able to accentuate it. And every technology, by the way, as you start seeing it, it starts converging towards this dopamine pathway. And so that's my biggest concern is right now, this is a very exciting time in AI because it's discovery, it's interest, it's what I would call more serotonergic. Like you're hitting different parts of your brain that you haven't hit in a long time. But as soon as you connect the AI to some form of dopamine loop, I will tell you what I think it is. I think it's AR or VR, but I'm like 99.9% sure that the convergence of those two is actually where it gets really scary. If you're wearing glasses that are now able to recreate reality around you in real time, that is what's incredibly scary, because then you don't know what's real and what's not, and that's where AI really. Just think about it this way. Today, on your headset with your your VR headset, it's actually rendering each image, and ultimately, what I'm really worried about is that if it's doing generative work with